April 17th work session and calls meeting. Everyone had a chance to read over those minutes. I did have one question. Unfortunately, I don't see our city attorney here. Maybe you all can help me out. I believe we identify when we go into an executive session the allowable reason, either for lawsuits or real estate. Okay, well, I noticed the minutes, both those meetings that we just mentioned did have executive sessions attached to them. I don't think the minutes reflected one of the three legal reasons for that executive session. I believe that should probably be a good policy to follow. Could you make those corrections? Absolutely. I appreciate it. Any other corrections to the minutes? Okay, there's no objection. We'll put them on the consent agenda to be passed at our following call meeting. Topics for discussion. A, I believe, has been pulled to a family emergency, so we will not be talking about the Housing Opportunity Commission discussion today. Item B, this is a follow-up on North Main Street traffic concerns that were brought up at our last meeting by two North Main residents. And I think, John, if you want to make some discussions on the changes that have been made.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we had a lengthy conversation about the challenges that some residents on North Main Street, but also South Main Street as well, as it relates to speeding and traffic. And there were specific requests made during that meeting. Since then, the first request is that we move the sign so that it's more visible to the motoring public. This is coming into town, and that has been accomplished. We also directed our city engineer, Aaron Wadley, to file the necessary paperwork so we can get going with a conversation with the state for a crosswalk. And all of us agree that that's really a safety issue that needs to be addressed. And so while Aaron was clear that for the most part, that's a lengthy process, hopefully we'll get lucky because of the construction that'll be taking place on that street in the near future. And so we're hoping that it won't take forever to get a crosswalk in there. And lastly, the issue was police presence and enforcement, traffic enforcement. And interestingly, I was at the MadFest this weekend. I want to congratulate our staff for another extraordinary public event. But 3 or 4 different people came up to me while I was there who are residents on Main Street. I'm not sure whether it's south or north or whatever. I think they had heard that Ms. Bromley and Mr. Mike were here to talk to us or whatever. And I heard a consistent message that there is a feeling in the community by residents of Main Street that we are lacking in terms of presence and in terms of enforcement. So I communicated with the chief that it's a concern, and we expect to see it addressed promptly. And so it's only been a week, but I think that that's pretty good progress.
Any questions or comments for John on? Ooh. One thing I did neglect to mention, we do follow Robert's Rules of Order here. My personal feeling is in the work session, we can be a little bit more relaxed with some of those rules. The purpose of a work session, in my mind, and hopefully most of yours, is to have a dialogue, a conversation back and forth. And I think this council has shown remarkable decorum in the past, and I don't think it's necessary for you to ask the chair for permission to speak at our work sessions. I think the unwritten rules of courtesy and civil discourse will prevail, and so please keep that in mind. The next item up for discussion, item C, discussion of parking requirements in our zoning ordinance, with my name attached to that item. I mainly wanted to kind of start us, I don't have any real recommendations for changes to the zoning ordinance at this point, but I think it's important that that issue is so vital that we all, I think on the council, need to start thinking about it. And I wanted to start off with just kind of a little bit of a refresher course for the public as to what our current zoning requirements are for parking and some of the inequities. We've heard many comments over the last couple of applications, and will the record reflect that our city attorney has arrived. Welcome, Mr. Powell. So I think to start off with, I think the most recent applications we've had for zoning variances, we had a lot of comments about parking inequity, why are some properties treated differently than others, and I wanted to kind of go over just a couple of things to kind of maybe clarify that in people's minds, and some areas that I think seemed a little odd. We generally have a requirement for parking for apartment buildings. That is at 1 per unit plus 1 for every 4 units. You do the math, hence the 1 1/4 units per apartment. In doing a little bit of research, I kind of came into this thinking that seemed a little bit insufficient in my mind. As I look at it, I have found that the trend in parking requirements is to kind of go to less parking. I'm not sure that really works in the Madison model or not, but it's something to think about. The range goes from 0 requirements to maybe 2 per unit. A number of jurisdictions also do 1 parking stall per bedroom, therefore reflecting a better connection between the number of people in the apartment. Right now we just do the 1 per apartment and one additional one for every 4 apartments. When it comes to commercial, it's pretty stringent. It's 1 parking space for every full-time employee, or 1 parking place for every 200 square feet of floor space in the business. And that applies generally to all commercial entities in the city. Restaurants are pretty strict as well. The big change, I think, that makes people think there's an inequity involved is the exception. The businesses in the downtown commercial district, C1, are exempt from that requirement. And that's under the theory that we have city parking. We don't want to take up a valuable commercial space with unsightly parking lots. We have 0 lot lines. That's the historic character of Madison and a lot of other commercial districts. We want to protect that. So that theory works great when there is, as the zoning ordinance says, ample street parking. I think that term ample may be a bit generous. We may have sufficient, we may not have sufficient, but I think it's important that everyone, including our friends in the commercial sector, play a role in crafting solutions for allowing parking. What happens when we have that large exemption is that we taxpayers in effect we kind of subsidize the commercial sector. And that's a good thing, because the commercial sector for us in Madison is really important. I'm convinced, and I've said this many a times, that one of the benefits of living in Madison is that the downtown commercial district is so attractive. We live in a vital community. We see pedestrians and shoppers walking all the time. We as residents have wonderful choices of restaurants to go to and shops to go to. So I have no problem subsidizing them. But it's important to remember that the taxpayers are subsidizing the expense of purchasing parking areas, paying for lighting, maintenance, repaving and striping and all that. And we as residents benefit, but so do the merchants. So there are a number of ways that we can kind of maybe share some of that responsibility. I know planning in a discussion with Monica and Molly the other day, they have in the past made a number of suggestions, including one that I think our city manager, Clem, has proposed as well as a possibility to look at, and that's setting up kind of a parking bank. So it doesn't put the full burden of providing parking on city taxpayers. Basically, it involves the merchants as well. And it's in their interest to craft parking solutions. I mean, as we grow as a community and as the county grows beyond their 22,000, that is going to happen, and there'll be more demand for parking in the downtown. And I just want to make sure we are financially able to keep up with the demand for increased parking as we grow as a community. Because the retail sector is really important. I mean, people come to Madison to see the historic houses. They also come to enjoy our downtown. And we have great shopping, we have great restaurants, and we all benefit from that. I mean, you drive around Georgia and you will not find towns of 5,000 people that have as many restaurant choices and as many retail choices as we have in Madison. And personally, I'm very proud to live in a town that shows that kind of exuberance and vitality, and you just don't see that in the vast majority of towns in Madison. So there's a couple of things to think about. Also, the requirement for infill apartments, generally speaking, is you have to have a one parking stall per unit within 400 feet. In the commercial district, that is another exemption. You can have a designated parking for that apartment unit anywhere in the district. And if you have an apartment up on Main Street and your assigned parking place is way down by the park, are you really going to be 2-3 times a day parking there, walking up to your apartment? I don't think so. You're going to be using either the untimed parking we have or the timed parking right on the street and hoping you don't get a ticket. That's that to me seems to be the reality of it. Those are some of the things I was looking at, and I welcome any comments other council members may have about parking. I think the inequity that was brought to our attention a number of times by other restaurant owners is the fact that we have to draw the district line somewhere. And if you have a restaurant in P2 and you are required to have parking, but right across the street is the downtown commercial and you're exempt, it has an appearance of unfairness, but you have to draw the line somewhere. So you either look at the rules and maybe say, okay, they'll be exempt, but there should be some other way of compensating to make it a little bit more even. That's just kind of my general thinking, and I hope, if nothing else, we can put some more thought into this, but I'd be welcome any comments anyone has at this point.
I guess I have a question. You were talking about the trend is toward less stringent parking requirements. Was there a rationale for that?
I'd be glad to entertain an answer to that question from Monica, who claims that there is actual data supporting that trend. Am I right, Monica?
Now it is. Okay, so I don't need to claim it, I know it. Go to enough training over the last 28 years where they actually exercise the encouragement that you delete a lot of parking requirements, and not just from downtown. There's been a trend for the last 25 to 30 years to exempt downtowns to allow them to compete with the malls. Because you don't pay for parking at the malls, so that's an ongoing trend. They encourage you to fully exempt that. Madison embraced that years ago. That's not a change. Just to clarify the record, it's been that way as long as I can remember. We could certainly do the research on that. The exemption has existed to encourage downtown to be vital and has played a vital role in the exuberance that Councilmember Joyce, or am I supposed to refer to you as Vice Mayor Joyce today? Is that in the formality?
You can call me Eric.
Okay, all right. I was just teasing you a little bit. It was nice to see you run a meeting, so I was giving you a little tease this morning. So it is actually the trend to decrease parking throughout cities now, not just in your downtown areas. For the last 30 years, it has been best practice for both recommended by the National Main Street, recommended by APA, American Planning Association, as well as the Georgia Planning Association, is to decrease the parking burden in the downtown area as an economic incentive device. We're now seeing that recommendation to reevaluate the levy of parking throughout cities as a whole. We have not embraced that yet. We do, as Eric said, remain kind of a fairly stringent outside of our downtown. I will just give you a brief timeline if I can. There is plenty of data. There is plenty of information at multiple national and state websites that I can provide you links to that enter the parking discourse. There are full planning manuals on parking, so there's lots of good information that's out there that we can reference for you of why you do your parking measures the way you do. It's it's something y'all chose to do. There were some edits to that. So over time, the edits that you have given have been to re-strengthen your parking requirements in downtown. So you did have a full exemption, and I say these things because I don't mind saying them anymore. We now have the Everett Royal Rule. After he installed the conference facility and residential, we realized that maybe we need to levy parking on residential. So it's not for apartments, it's for residential units of any type. So residential units are required to provide parking in our downtown, and that was an ad about Madison Markets was what, 2007, 5, somewhere in that range. So around 2005, y'all added residential apartments, places of assembly, and Eric, excuse me, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but one other thing. So you were fully exempt until 2005, where y'all added back parking requirements to those 2 or 3 things. The only other real change you've had since then is you also opted to allow parking off-site, as Eric said, within 400 feet.
Lodging was the other.
Thank you. Lodging was the other one. And then the other one, y'all have since changed that from 400 feet to anywhere in the downtown area. And that has been within the vote session of at least 3 or 4 of the council members. So no longer is it 400 feet, it's anywhere in the downtown development area. So it could be even further than that. And so that is something, if you want to reevaluate, we're happy to look at, but y'all have gotten ever permissive with the distance from residential that can be. And so just that small tweak, you had everything else right, just that small tweak. We've always been exempt since we've had a Main Street, and then we've added back residential, and then we loosened residential's proximity. But it is the trend, and I don't know that there's any data that specifically shows that people have reversed that trend and how it's impacted their downtown, but I'd be happy to research that if that would help you.
I was just curious. That's a real interesting, that's a question mark to me,
Yeah.
why they would do that.
We've put a list of 10 to 15 items of how to address equity. I'm not going to refer to as inequity, but equities in the ordinance. Because I think inequity is from your standpoint, but to encourage equity, and y'all have got several options if you're happy to discuss those at some point when it's more appropriate, when you're ready.
And I will say, Jim, to your question, the trend may be there. I don't disagree with what Monica's saying. But when you talk to shop owners, retailers in Madison, and restaurant owners, I can think of half a dozen ones I've spoken to who mention parking as a problem. There is insufficient parking in front of their stores for the owner, for their employees, and for their customers.
Yes,
And
sir, I wasn't addressing
yeah. So just,
sufficiency.
I mean, the trend is one thing, but the reality of, a restaurant owner down by the park told me that's his biggest concern. He feels he has insufficient parking. And unfortunately, the way our ordinance is set up, that kind of falls on the city to come up with parking solutions. We did, at our last meeting, talking about the transportation plan, I think we passed a resolution to look at the possibility of recommending a parking structure downtown. There are a number of lots that can do a podium parking, 2-story podium parking. One level entrance, you need grade, so you can have one level enter on one side and the next level on the other side, and not pay for the expense of internal ramps and losing all that parking space. That's kind of a long-term expensive solution, but something that could be looked at, and that was to be added to our transportation plan. Are there other questions or comments about parking?
I have a second. Are our shop owners having to abide by the 2-hour parking rule? Are there people who are parking in the 2-hour spots and having to move their car every 2 hours or something?
So the answer to your question is not simple. There's two types of parking in downtown. There's off-street and on-street. We do not believe, based on 3 studies in a row, that we have an on-street parking problem. We do believe we have an off-street parking problem. We've had one for about 15 years. Off-street is where the employees and the owners of the shops depend on off-street parking. There is an inequity, and the inequity is where it's pushed the burden of what they would normally provide for their business onto the taxpayer. I understand why we do it, and I'm certainly not going to tell you that that they have ample parking for their employees, but that's where we're seeing the pull and tug. So what they do is we do see people park on street because it's convenient. Parking in communities that are starting to experience, I told Eric this when he came in to do research, parking is more often monitored by an outside agency. It's not necessarily considered police work, or especially if you don't have a fully staffed police. And so it's usually an outside agency, so you can accomplish that at a lower rate, and you may enforce the turnover. We do have merchants that park on street. We have, and I shouldn't say merchants. Let me change my my verbiage on that. We do have owners and employees that park on street because we see it out of our professionals as well. Some people treat it as an expense of doing business and write their tickets off. So we've had to go to kind of a ramping ticket thing. You can look at Philip's past reports and look at how many parking tickets that were issued monthly. I'm sure the chief can provide those now. I do think there's enforcement for it, but I don't think there is adequate off-street parking. The city has taken money. John has been very supportive of us buying the Jefferson Street lot, and we've bought additional land for parking. We've even expended money on increasing the McFadden repairs to get that. The taxpayers pay for that. It's kind of like comp planning. People come in and they say, we want these things. But when you start putting a price tag to those things, they're a little less willing to say they want those things. So I think all of our merchants would be very happy to have more parking. I think all of our professionals would be very happy to support more parking in the downtown. When you start talking about it being $30,000 a parking space to provide it, and whether in its surface slot parking has one price, then it's podium parking, and then it's deck parking. Once you start talking about the price tag, whether it is to the taxpayer or whether the burden is shifted to the downtown property owners, that's where the rubber's going to hit the road for y'all. Can we do it? Absolutely. Y'all are going to have that discussion of who bears the burden. But given our current economic crisis, I assume that it's not going to be the city who's going to pay for a deck or a podium. It's probably going to pass on to either the taxpayer or the downtown property owner. Right now, there is an inequity. How you decide to shift that burden is going to be, if you have a downtown restaurant and you're providing, normally out on the strip, you would provide 25 spaces, and you are getting a huge cost savings to come downtown with your restaurant instead of going to the strip. 25 spaces times at least 10 to 15 for a surface lot space. That is something you're not paying to maintain, you're not paying to stripe, you're not paying to build. Those are a huge economic incentive to put your restaurant in downtown as opposed to on the strip. So y'all have to decide who's going to bear that burden.
And a couple other points. The property owners in the downtown commercial district do pay, they have that little extra property tax bump. The special district is a small amount. It was really designed to cover the extra expense of lighting, more lights, more electricity to power the lights. My understanding is that that little bit of extra money barely covers that expense, not to mention the increased attention that our street department does in the downtown with blowing and and the parking on top of that, so,
That's correct. 15 years ago, the finance director told me that the BID, which is essentially a business improvement district, functions as an STD because it predates BID law, that doesn't even cover the lighting and has never covered the lighting. So it is, and I believe, someone can correct me for the record if I'm wrong, but since the special tax district was levied in '84, the council has always taken the rollback. It has never increased it.
And the last thing I wanted to point out is that for infill apartments or residential units in the downtown, if there is not parking on that specific property, they're allowed, as we said, to have parking elsewhere within the commercial district. However, it is supposed to be under, quote, exclusive control, meaning ownership of such remote space or a lease of such space for no less than 2 years. I'm not so sure we are meeting that standard. I mean, does that require that those spaces have a sign exclusively for the resident of C3 and a certain address? We don't have that now. I think it's very loosely interpreted. I'm convinced that a lot of the downtown existing infill apartments are probably parking on city streets, street parking, at least part of the time. That's something else to keep in mind. Last chance before we move on. Rick, Carrie, anything? Betsy?
No, I'm looking forward to hopefully one day having a parking deck, parking podium or whatever it is. And I don't know how long in the future that will be, but that's what we actually need downtown. And we've spoken about that a couple of times, and I think work sessions, and we've talked about different areas. So, you know, I know right now is not the time, but we need to keep it, you know, in the back of our minds, but really close. Because downtown has really no parking. I mean, even for Madison Fest, I was there on Saturday as well, and it was a lot of people there. I was in and out, and I had to ride around to find somewhere to park. So it's really needed.
So Carrie, I think parking has probably entered the era where it's going to be a bond issue. I
Yes.
haven't talked with finance or John about that yet,
Okay.
but we have now breached 5,000 people and 20,000 people in the county. The source that the DDA looked at for funding a deck even
Yes.
15 years ago was USDA. They draw the line at rural at 5 and 20. So at this point, we will not qualify for a grant. We will only qualify for a grant loan. And we would not probably qualify that under USDA anymore because we're now no longer rural.
Right.
So just be aware that that's now a long-term planning option because of the finance that you find yourself in.
Thank you.
And I would like to just briefly, before I get up, echo Councilmember Joyce's request for the off-street exclusivity strengthening. We've needed that for a couple of years. We've got 2 people that we've turned away for permits for downtown residential because they couldn't provide that. We've got 2 people that we know have abused it in the past. Preston's not on that list, by the way, but that doesn't mean his residents aren't. And then the last thing I would add to that is we have had, and this is not throwing shade at the county because I know Blake is with us today, but just to be clear, one. No,
Don't leave the county manager out.
It is a statement of fact. I've quit worried about bruising feelings anymore. I'm just stating facts today. So the fact is that one of the reasons that our ordinances are harder to handle, and we got asked to manage our own building permitting process, is because amongst the things that were of concern, those exclusivity guarantees for 3 or 4 apartments weren't enforced, and that's why we have 4 units above Betty Jean's, and we have 1 unit above Barking Dog that were installed without that. That doesn't mean the city hasn't made similar errors, but that we do have probably 7 units in the downtown that do not have the requisite reserve parking. And I know that Kathy Russell, when she did the upstairs over the Yale Colonial, did not get required to do it, and there was an ongoing code enforcement presence that we had to manage for about 4 weeks until we got that unit to start using the alley. So I want to echo Councilmember Joyce's request to look at that section. That's where we see some mismanagement. And then we also see that there's a need for off-street parking as soon as y'all will identify the funding source. That would be great.
Thank you. And since the county is here, maybe we can partner and build a deck together. Thank you.
We've pitched that.
I'm pitching it again. I'm pitching it now.
We were told the land was several millions of dollars, so just add that to the bond.
Okay, we'll
But-
add that to the bond.
But
But they're here, so let's pitch it
So
now. We're
I'm
pitching.
confused. Does the county need parking in the city? Let me think. They might need a little bit, but maybe one
I'm
or
going to
two.
leave the table and let y'all.
Out of
explore.
order, out of order.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, from now on, you need to ask permission to speak from the chair. Change that rule quickly. Okay, any other comments about parking? And thank you for that, Carrie, appreciate that. No one? Okay, the next item up is the Madison book license, second printing. I believe that's under your name, Monica. What is that about?
Yes, sir. We have run through the bicentennial book. So the city part of the brokered deal for the bicentennial book, for those of y'all who weren't here in 2009, was that we partnered with Historic Madison Morgan Foundation. David Land headed that up. This is your brief recap. They coordinate all the owners. They got access to their homes. They did all the photography. And in exchange, they received a portion of book sales. It was $10 a book. We have now run through all the books that were printed, and that we have also fully tipped out, or close to fully tipped out, Historic Madison Morgan Foundation. So I have also sold all the books in my office. So there are no more books to be had other than the luxury editions, which are cased. And they're super expensive. So the merchants will not buy those, of course, the Cultural Center, they're not picking those up. We sell a box of books for about $240. Those would run them in the 1,000 range, because they're the luxury books. So we have reached that point where y'all can decide to print, or if you don't want to manage it, finance has expressed reluctance to manage book sales. It's not fun. I'm sure it's just an added piece of work. But if you would like to, you have the option, since you hold the license, to lease the license, or you could sell the license. So you could sell it, or you could lease the next 2 printings and let someone else do the outlay, take the risk, and reap the revenue. So I today wanted to give you an idea of what we printed, what the sales were worth, and so that you can kind of determine what the value is. I asked our publisher to provide a value. He said all we can really do is tell you what the retail price is, and you can do the revenue model on it, but we're not, that's a suggested retail price. That's why we always see suggested retail. So the reprint would run about $20,000 for 1,000 books. We could keep the same $10 that HMMF received per book and license it out to a third party. We would want to, of course, make sure that was a responsible third party. The revenue that came in that was collected by the city was around $215,000. And this is the important part though, that was from 2009 to 2026. So it's not quick revenue. You have to manage the inventory. You have to store the inventory, and I managed all that part of it, and then you have to take in the funds, and if we sell retail, you have to tip out to the state for sales tax, which we don't do and haven't done. We've sold them to 3 or 4 outlets, whether they were merchants or artist centers or cultural centers, and let them both reap the revenue and take the tip out. So the city hasn't really covered labor costs for this, and so y'all can decide that this is something that you would rather sell entirely, which I don't recommend and is not my recommendation, that you let someone else control the product we paid for. But you might want to lease the license and let someone else take the responsibility of managing the product and the sales, but also receiving the benefit. And y'all can negotiate what you want your tip back to be. And I just mentioned that Historic Medicine Morgan Foundation got $10 a book back. So that seems like a reasonable. They're selling as a rule to retail for $30 each. And, wholesale for $30 each, excuse me for misspeaking. And then at market, they're selling at $50 each. So if you go into one of our, the Cultural Center, you can buy a book for $50 that they received from us for $30 that HMMF got $10 of, if that helps you with cash flow. Don't need a decision today, but I know that John said, don't be crazy, but we need revenue sources from anywhere. So this is basically a city asset that I'm not encouraging you to sell off city assets, but I am encouraging you that this is one you can lease out. And if y'all decide you want to do that, you can decide how much revenue you want for that, or you could decide on a flat fee for the service or a flat fee per book that you would receive as the sales occurred.
Did I understand you correctly that the sales through the Cultural Center are through our license?
You understood that the Cultural Center is one of the outlets. At first, it was 5 merchants plus the Cultural Center, and now we're down to 1 merchant
That's
and the
Madison
Cultural
Market?
Center. No, two merchants. In High Cotton also picks them up.
Yeah, they do, right.
So in High Cotton, Madison Markets, and the Cultural Center are the only 3 outlets now, but I am fully out of book. The Cultural Center came and got the last 4 boxes, and then I sold Margaret the last 12 that were free. Or not free, but loose, not in box.
Can we assume that you have a line outside your office of people who want to lease this?
No, you should not assume that. I did have someone that is looking at renting the depot. And in exchange, they're looking at building out some of the interior that the T-Splosh doesn't cover. And they're looking at Madison product that they would potentially sell. And I was trying to broker some of the ornaments. And it came up about the book. Could they get the book? I said, sure, you can get the book. And then it dawned on me, well, I might not have enough product. And so it occurred to me that y'all could look at licensing it. So that it's fully in your control. City of Madison holds the license. Any other questions for me this morning?
I will say it's a fabulous book. It's top quality. It's really a good book. Perhaps, John, you can get together with Karen Stapp, our finance manager, and give us some advice on the finance. I think that would probably be the best way to go. I'm a little unsure whether I'm reluctant to get out of what we do as a city, whether it's managing properties or whether it's selling books. It may not be in our wheelhouse, but if there's money to be made, it's something to consider. Any comments? Anybody else?
Normally, if it's a profit revenue item, it's usually either marketed through the Main Street program or the Downtown Development Authority. That's how other cities handle those revenue models, because they typically, with product, because they typically have contact with the public. We could also license it to the CVB if they wanted to take the risk, if they've got a spare $25,000 to print. 2025.
Thank you.
If I may, does the CVB not sell it? Do they sell
No, they do not. The
things?
CVB has not wanted to sell anything because they don't want to handle the tip to Department of
I
Revenue.
understand.
Anybody who's not normally doing retail sales and remitting sales tax, we tried to push Marguerite into it time and time again. But then no, there's no sales. We even wanted to sell some brochures that we had done for $1, and the response was no. We'll give them out for free, but no sales.
Gotcha, thank you.
But that is our CVB, that's not normal, just to be clear. Other CVBs do that. Not criticism of our CVB.
Okay.
Just a distinction.
The next item up for discussion is the contract with Keck and Woods regarding additional planning or preliminary engineering award and right-of-way agreement for Aaron Wadley, our city and county engineer.
Yes, thank you. So I've had to bring Monica because she is the smart person in the room on this. And we have two issues here. One is additional PE award. As you're all aware, there was a shortfall, probably not a shortfall, it was over expenditure, more work required in the preliminary engineering phase of the Gateway Grant. And the city was going to have to pay a significant amount of money. Monica was able to get a grant, additional money from GDOT to fund 80% of that. So it was a good win. So up today is accepting that grant and being on the line for that 80%, or the 20%, I'm sorry. But it's a good deal for the city. It's not additional money to be spent. This is actually a cost savings, because otherwise you would have to spend the entirety, which I believe was $153,000, $253,000. Said we've got the expert here, so in addition to that, we've gotten a right-of-way agreement from Keck and Wood. This is to begin the right-of-way plans and prepare for final right-of-way authorization with GDOT. This gets our project to the point, the Gateway project, to the point that it can be shelved, move forward. It gives us more options, but GDOT needs it to go to right-of-way. We need right-of-way plans. We need it to be right-of-way ready, which is if you heard before, shovel-ready project. Puts us in favorable terms if additional federal monies come at some point. Or if we decide we want to go ahead and build this project. I think right now that may be delayed a little bit, but this is where GDOT needs us to be to move beyond where we're at, and for them to fully satisfy the federal requirements of this project to this point. Once right-of-way is authorized and the right-of-way plans are done, GDOT is okay with us waiting on this project before we spend more money. Up to this point, we're at risk for having to pay back federal money, because GDOT is at risk for having to pay back federal money if the project does not reach the right-of-way phase. So I'm going to let Monica talk more on the details of this if you have questions, but everything is before you. Is there 2 agreements in here?
Yes, sir.
For Keck and Wood? There's 2 Keck and Wood agreements, and then also the authorization to accept the additional PE award.
And that includes the right-of-way agreement.
Let the expert talk on this.
So just to give you a recap on the amounts, the city received an award of $433. It's not that includes the 80-20 split. So your amount that you were receiving from the feds is 80% of that $433. And I think I have that right. And then the city's match to that was $86,000. That was correctly budgeted, and you did have that money. The difference is this project was done estimated in 2021, and GDOT recognized the escalation in engineering fees. So to get the project through PE, the quotes from Keck and Wood that you see before you today represent a $253,000 shortfall. And so when we made our second approach to GDOT, they did fund $202,400. And then your match to that is in the 50 range, 56, I believe. So instead of to get to the end of engineering, you pay in 263, or 253, you would be paying 56, 58. So that is a significant cost savings, if you want to look at it that way, but you could also look at it, and it might be characterized as an expenditure because you're not budgeted for that. So I do want to be clear about that so that it doesn't get mischaracterized. Then where GDOT wants you to get is correctly the way Aaron said it. They call it design to let. And so that does mean they would like for you to execute. They have expressed good faith by giving you another $202,000 to get to finish of engineering. they would like you to sign the right-of-way agreement. Let's talk about what the right-of-way agreement commits you to. The right-of-way agreement does not commit you to going ahead and buying any parcel immediately. Okay? What it does is it goes ahead and allows the state to secure the federal funding for the 80% of that. So they are estimating that the right-of-way acquisition, I believe, is $260. They're trying to secure the $210 in federal dollars, and I will be very honest, they've already told me they've already done that. They've secured the $210, but their goodwill was to go ahead and get that done, but that requires a $50,000 match out of y'all, give or take a little bit, 56, I believe. So our burden goes from having to lay out 253 to actually getting to the second phase. That's their inducement to get you to the second phase, where you're basically laying out a total of about 115, give or take a little bit. So what that does mean is that you would commit to the right-of-way acquisition. However, I want to give one qualifier. The engineer went over for about an hour with me that of that $260 for right-of-way acquisition, that is overkill. The federal government requires them to do worst-case scenario, that you are condemning property, that you are doing all the things the most expensive way possible. When the engineer went back through it and redlined it, he said that he thinks the actual match will be under $20,000. It won't be $58,000. But they can't give, like government, local government does bare bones and does, here's what we think it'll do. The federal government does the reverse. They do worst-case scenario. So they are required, when they do their estimating for right-of-way, to do worst-case scenario. So you are hearing today from me the worst-case scenario. Keck and Wood is expecting it to be under 20, so that would take your match down to around 75, 78. But that's where they want to be. As Aaron correctly stated it, GDOT wants you to get to let. The minute we indicate that we're not proceeding to let, we have to indicate whether we're abandoning or sitting, and that triggers different things. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I believe that is a summary.
Yeah, and this is a project, you've got a lot of projects out here right now that probably we wouldn't want to acquire right-of-way on. This is probably one you want to go ahead and do that and just be ready to build, given where GDOT's at.
Why is that, Aaron?
Because your right-of-way is very limited on this. It's very inexpensive, but in the future it may not be. And if you can be, again, shovel-ready, then you're going to be in a really good place to get federal funds in the future, or pause. Yes, you've got lots of options. You've got other projects that we probably won't recommend moving forward on right-of-way right now, but you would go ahead and sign the agreement, do the authorization for the PE to enter right-of-way, to do the right-of-way plans, but you're not going to acquire the parcels. This is one you probably want to go ahead and acquire the parcels if you can find the funding. It's going to be to your benefit long-term, and this is a really good project for the city.
Two thoughts on that. One of the reasons why it's really good is right now you enjoy a good relationship with your Downtown Development Authority, and they own most of the parcels. And so we considered in that scenario that they would be cooperative and gift most of their stuff. And at this time, I think that's still a high potential. The other project that might be like that is College, and that's because the school is also a cooperative governmental agency. The others, I think, Aaron's right, pausing's probably smarter, and we can give you the ramifications, but we're not prepared to discuss those today. The other thing I want to mention is that the right-of-way agreement, while it does commit you to right-of-way acquisition, the matching funds, since everything's about timing these days, the matching funds are not required until the point you make the first acquisition. Does that make sense? Now, this one might be one you pull the trigger quicker, but that's also up to you, and it would come back to you at that time.
I do want to again applaud Monica for getting this additional grant. As you know, the city was turned down for additional money on all these projects, and Monica went back to the program development team at program delivery team at GDOT and was able to get this additional funding. It's a big win for the city.
Thank you, Monica.
Y'all don't owe me thanks for it. What I would say is I'm trying to make sure that we alleviate any burden that we're facing, but I also want you to know that they are making offers of additional funding that are good faith efforts, so they are expecting the same out of the city.
I believe it was at our retreat, I think the suggestion was made, and I think there was general agreement that whenever we look at contracts such as these that involve money, that we have an opinion from our director our fiscal director, Karen Stapp. Karen, are you able to make some comments up here on this particular application? I think it's a practice, I think that we seem to think at the retreat was a good idea to not pass any of these things till we at least get an opinion from our finance manager. You got any money, Karen?
So these two items were part of the $342,000 that, for additional funding that was needed for the TAP grants. There is no identified funding source right now for this. As we're working through the budget constraints, we're looking at all avenues to get a funding source for these. It might result in either cutting or downsizing other projects. But hopefully we will have something to propose in the FY27 budget. But currently, no, there is no funding source for this.
Okay, I was gonna ask, as long as we're not cutting Andrews Park.
We'll have a proposal for the FY27 budget.
Okay.
I think our city manager may have a comment along those fronts, John.
No, I just wanted to add that this is a challenging situation for us, especially at this time. It kind of goes without saying, but I'm confident, the team of Aaron and Monica and Karen really have a good grasp on this, and it is a challenge for us, but I think there's a really good faith effort on everyone to pull together to try to figure out how we're going to get through this. The difficult issue will land on your desk soon, because you're ultimately going to decide where the money comes from or whatever. But the truth is that our options are very limited, because we've accepted state and federal funds, and if we back out now, it'll cost us 10 times as much as it would to solve the problem. So we don't have a lot of options, and I think that Monica and Aaron and Karen are working really well together to try to figure this out. But there's going to be some tough decisions for you to make to bridge the gap.
Am I right, John, in surmising that one of the sources could be a painful one? Not necessarily what Councilmember Peters-Reed is mentioning, but other equally deserving projects that may have to be cut, such as LMIG repaving of city streets?
Well, since we get so little of that, it would be almost laughable for Aaron Wadley to propose that we take the pittance of state funds that we get that are woefully inadequate to address our roads program to deal with this. I think the truth is we're probably looking at other projects, and the council will have to set priorities in terms of which projects are the highest priority or whatever. And I think when you look at the list, you'll probably conclude that there are some. Council Peters-Reed mentioned one that's important in her district, but that there are some that I think for the most part will be deemed more of a priority right now. And we'll work through that process. As was said, we don't have a lot of options, and we've got to address this. And so you'll see the list of options, and you get to decide how we're going to fund it.
What's the timeline on this? I mean, I'm feeling like we've got to pull the trigger on this sooner than later.
So the other projects, as well as this one, have been on hold since October.
Right.
We're 4.5, well, no, more than that, months behind schedule. GDOT is frustrated with us at best. They are expecting a gateway answer so that they will know how to proceed at your regular meeting. That's why this and only this one is on your agenda. I would encourage you to respond however you're going to respond, so that at least GDOT knows what we're willing to do in response to their actions. They've taken action, they're looking for you to take action.
So basically, this would go on our next city council meeting for a decision.
Which will be in about 15 minutes.
Oh,
I think that
gotcha.
Monica may have understated. The state has really been patient with us, but I think their patience are running out, and on this one project, we've got to decide what we're going to do. Or, I mean, we don't want them to back out of the commitments that they've already made to us. So I'm just, and Monica's the one that has to face the piper in terms of talking to folks or whatever, and she's been asked on numerous occasions, well, have they decided yet? Well, what's the city doing or whatever? So she's really done extraordinary work to try to keep the wolves at bay, so to speak, but we need an answer on this.
So I'll always kind of at least tell you which ones are hot button pushes. When Horse Branch got tight and we were starting to hear the push, I pushed to put it on your docket repeatedly. Even if y'all say no, at least that's an answer, and they will go away and do whatever they're going to do. So Horse Branch y'all have dealt with, and it is at a good point. Gateway's the next hot button. I encourage you to ask all your questions and whatever you need, and then make those decisions so that I can at least relay that in a responsible fashion to GDOT, so that they will know that you've responded to their action.
I have a general question, I guess, about escalating prices on things.
Yes.
And just I'm watching inflation. Inflation might be running at 3%, but it sounds like we're talking about really dramatic increases in prices and costs.
So, and I welcome Aaron to weigh in, but he's still here. So what I would offer you is that GDOT has seen that. They responded to that with our other 4 sidewalk taps. They started off with a much higher initial funding, so the Gateway was funded at $433 between 2021 and 2023 when those awards were made. There was a huge escalation. They knew that was going to happen. They expected the supplemental funding request. We just over-asked. So when they funded the sidewalk projects, they funded those at $600 and then turned around and added $275 to those. They knew that there was an escalation. So our other projects don't have the same escalation concern. The match concern, yes, is there, but the escalation concern does not exist for the other 4, but it did exist for Gateway. They were expecting a request for supplemental, and they have risen and matched that. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, so we're seeing transportation projects, which sidewalks are considered transportation, averaging about 7% a year in inflation instead of the standard 2 to 3.5%, for a lot of reasons. And we're seeing engineering fees also on these GDOT projects, that they're rising roughly that same amount. A lot of that's driven by the mega projects that are being done around Atlanta. They're drawing resources away, and so we're having to compete with those projects for professional services and also for just general road construction services. So these sidewalk projects fall under that because you've got to, everybody's got to be GDOT pre-qualified. So the cost increase is real, and that is a risk that you bear as a city, because you're awarded a grant with a match, a 20% match, but the grant doesn't go up if the costs go up unless we're awarded more money. So the cost increase is a risk, and Monica's right that we did get more on other projects, but this one is a big shortfall, and we're probably going to see that exponentially in construction whenever these do move forward.
So we know going forward that we have to, there's nothing wrong in life if you find out that you over-projected and you thought it was going to be 200 grand and it turned out to be 150 grand, but obviously consistently it's going the other way. So we're working with Aaron and staff to implement procedures to cushion the possibility, because for a small city like this that has financial challenges, it can be devastating just to be 10 or 20% off.
And just to be clear, that is why GDOT pushes you to go to LET. So that where you do phase one, which is preliminary engineering, and the phase where you do right-of-way agreement, but not necessarily acquisition, they push you to do that, and it's called getting to LET. It means you have a shovel-ready project, and then you can shelve it. This is very common. Again, I know y'all heard this at a previous meeting, but it's not uncommon for cities to shelve somewhere between 3 to 20 years, depending on if they want to do bonds or other things to complete construction. But that's what GDOT is pushing on every project, for y'all to get to LET. And so that means the first two phases.
And so the right-of-way component of this agreement is not for acquisition of right-of-way. It's simply for setting up the legal framework to,
It is for acquisition, but you don't owe the match until you begin acquisition.
yeah.
Mr.
City
Chairman.
Attorney Powell, you've looked this contract over, I assume?
I have not, but I did want to say to Mr. Malinowski's question is, you're not looking at cost of living increases. Everything about a grant is a guess at the beginning point, including the engineering. And so what happened was your engineers overshot by what's I'm not saying they didn't deserve it, I'm just saying it was a guess to start with, and now it's overshot by a substantial sum. And so it's not normal cost of living factors, it's simply they sent you bills, or the work took a lot more than was expected at the beginning. You got that same risk factor with every grant you've got, they're guesses to start with. And then you've got a much bigger issue with regard to construction costs, because we all know those are accelerating pretty steadily, especially as competition gets bigger. So it's your guesses from the beginning that are disappointing you is what's driving that. And you got that same risk factor in every grant that you get from the state, so.
And the more we drag the decision-making process out, that's not a criticism, I'm just letting you know, the more we belay the decision-making, the more that risk grows.
And I do want to point out that you can't, these aren't price-based selections when you're choosing these engineers. They're 100% qualifications-based selections. You can back in with a budget if you have that ahead of time, but usually it's not. We don't know the target. So when you're going into these grants, like Mr. Powell said, that they're a huge guess as to what your budget might be. But the federal government requires that you do qualifications-based selections on all of these awards. So you don't get to say this is the best value firm, this is the best price firm, this is the best mix of value and price. It's just this is the most qualified firm based on the proposal that we received and the work package that they submitted as their references.
As we said earlier, we expect to have, right at the conclusion of this work session, to go into a call meeting and consider officially this. So this is you'll have a chance then if you want to ask more questions, but I would do it now. Are there any other comments, questions the council may have?
I've got a comment to make. I think, I'm going to say, I feel like there's more at stake here than just this contract. I know we're between a rock and a hard place, but I think it behooves us to stay in the good graces of GDOT, for them to continue to have confidence in us down the road. And I think we're really, whatever our commitment's going to be it up to 75,000, or if it's even down to 20,000, which would be great. I think that is an investment that goes way beyond, just this simple right-of-way agreement. I think it's important that we kind of show that we can come through down the road. Monica's done such great work working with GDOT, and for her to continue to be in those good graces as well, to show up and call one person and say, what about a little more help, and then it's there. Those doors are still open for us, and I don't want to see those closed well down the road, be it 10 or 15 years. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next item of business is the city manager's report. Manager Klim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 or 4 items. First of all, I just want to remind the council that we have our annual, well, it's actually, this is the second time this year, but our visit from the high school students. It's always a fun event, an informative event, and so if for any counselors that can join us, I'm sure the students would like strong participation, and I know Council Member Joyce and Malinowski are going to participate, and I think Council Blanton as well. But all are invited, and you'll enjoy it.
And that is following our meeting at 10 o'clock
Yes.
approximately today.
So the timing, so by the time we're done, they'll probably be here. So I just want to remind you of that. Secondly, I see our friends from Morgan County are here. I had a meeting this week with the county manager, which is a regular thing that we do and always appreciated. And I see our county commissioner here, and I joked because when I was over there this week at their office, there Mr. Blake was, or whatever, and I kidded with him that someone needs to tell him that it's supposed to be a part-time job, but I'm hopeful that his constituents recognize how much time he puts in to the job, and his friendship and support is appreciated. We'll also have a visit from the county manager at the next meeting to talk about an item or two or whatever, so we're looking forward to that. The first item I wanted to mention is trying to bring closure to the issue of the ex parte communication ban that we had at the last meeting, because I don't want staff to get mixed messages in terms of what your expectations are, because in addition to that issue, and it's a very important issue, I can say no matter what, if you talk to someone, no matter what side of the recent development issue they were on, they were kind of really surprised that there would be a prohibition for their elected officials, whether they were anti-development or pro-development, or whatever side they were on. There were a lot of folks that seemed to be surprised that you as elected officials could not give the courtesy of our citizens to discuss the issue, including our dedicated volunteers on our boards. I mean, they gave you a written recommendation, but I know some of them would have loved an opportunity to have a cup of coffee with you or whatever. And I know that this is on your radar screen, but this is my question. There's also additional issues that you've raised that staff is working on relative to variances. And so the question is, do you want it bundled, which will probably take longer, but will be a more comprehensive approach, or is your feeling that there is a need or a desire to get this ex parte communication thing off and running? Our city attorney has already drafted it or whatever, so there's a 60-day requirement. So the question is, how do you feel? How does the majority of this board feels, whether they want to get going on the ex parte issue while we're working on the other issues, or whether they're okay with bundling it and having it all together?
I'd like to comment on that, if I might. I have a sense of urgency about that, because I was embarrassed that we weren't able to speak to our constituents about this. They elect us to share their opinions with us and for us to represent them. And for us to say, I'm sorry, but I can't talk to you about this, is absurd. And I would love for us to make a statement to our city residents that we're going to do this, and we're going to do this as soon as we can.
I agree with Jim. I was against the implementation of it when we did implement it, and I'm in favor of turning it around, and sooner the better, I think.
I totally agree.
I think so too. We've kind of had a good discussion about the merits of it, and our city attorney has put together a document of the whereases, or the whereas-I, whatever may apply. So we're ready to go. I see no reason waiting for other potential recommendations for zoning changes. Why don't we just start with this? Is this subject to the 60-day stay requirement for public notice, Tony?
It is. It's weird. It has nothing to do with zoning really, but
but
it's
it's
in
in
the
the
zoning
zoning
ordinance, so
ordinance,
it'll
yeah.
take a recommendation from the planning and the advertising.
Okay, so, I believe it seems to be the sense of the council that we start the 60-day ASAP and do whatever public announcements meet that requirement, so we can get it on the first available planning and zoning meeting. And then whatever other changes that may be recommended can follow a different timetable.
This is just a text amendment, and we strike it. It's not a big deal. It's easy to do, and as long as we can make the time frame that we do for any other text amendment, we just take it forward. Again, planning staff was against this addition into the zoning ordinance as well. So it's an easy strike for us, and all we're just gonna do is eliminate the language. That's it.
Okay, so the 60-day thing would put us at which planning and zoning meeting?
Jill?
Jill's got the calendar.
So we just need to upload the text amendment online on May 14th, and that could bring us to June 18th, and then y'all would hear it July 13th. That's the earliest we could do it.
One correction, there, you can do it slightly earlier if you have a called meeting post the, so after P and Z meets, y'all could have a called meeting within 30 minutes of their meeting if you wanted to, but we have to know in advance so that we can advertise it by law correctly. We have to advertise both meetings at the same time.
And they're going to meet on what date? again?
You guys have a work session on the 3rd. The regular session is on the 13th of July, but they
Yeah.
have a work session on the 3rd, so you could do a called meeting after that, or you could do it after June 18th, which would be the Planning and Zoning Commission, so anytime.
Well, we're going to have a budget meeting on 24 June? I mean, a formal council meeting on 24 June.
Yes, sir, but I was told that no other items would be docketed on budget meetings. But I would say that there is no urgency. There's urgency to make sure your constituents understand it, but there was that clause that Rick demanded get added in. It says, at the discretion of the council member. So this is, you still have the latitude to talk to your constituents based on your discretion and your legal advice, and it's not forestalling that. Is it recommended best practice? Absolutely not. But if you choose to do it, that only applies to a variance. But Mike Naples wanted it to apply to everything. So there's nothing forestalling you from having that communication now by the language that's in there, but you'd like it cleaned up so that your constituents clearly understand that y'all are not gonna observe that language. And maybe erase that part of Councilmember Naples' amendment. Rick wins.
I do agree with that. I can't really tell you what an ex parte communication is in the context of a zoning case. So to be prosecuted based on that would be really hard. But, cleaning it up as soon as possible so that it's not there is better process.
Yes.
Okay, so you'll post that as soon as you,
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, are y'all okay with the May 14th deadline and then June 18th planning and zoning, and then at your regular session on July 13th? Is that okay?
yeah,
That's
that's
good.
regular order, sounds good to
That's
me.
good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
The next item is that you have received a package in front of you from Sean Wood, which deals with some proposals to reform or restructure our sanitation department. Their goal was, as Monica mentioned, all of our departments are looking for efficiencies and cost savings. And this is a proposal from Public Works in terms of cost savings in the area of sanitation and trash. And so he would like to appear at the next council meeting, but he wanted to give you the document beforehand so you could study it and take a look at it. But he will be on the agenda for the next meeting. And his goal was to try to cut costs without substantially reducing services. That's what his charge was. The next item is, there were several requests, and I got a call from a counselor in the last day or two about the transportation, the final version of the transportation plan, and I think there was public comment at the last meeting on that. And I conferred with Monica, and Molly has, and she's done a wonderful job, but she has included those comments into the final version. And the final version now is with the company. They're the ones that actually compile it and print it or whatever. So we don't have a copy yet to look at from the printers, from the company. But I'm assuming sometime in the relatively near future. Yeah.
Probably early next week, we'll post it to the website.
Okay. Very
So
good.
I think we received this from
Yeah.
public comment at the last week with a kind of a digest of some of the motions we made to adjust and kind of tweak some of the items of the transportation plan. So I appreciate you making sure that gets put in there. Anything else in your
That should-
report, John?
That should do it.
Okay. Okay. At this point, that is all on our agenda. I would like to move out of our regular session and go right in, unless someone needs a personal privilege break, we can go right into
I'm gonna go to my personal.
Okay, we'll take a recess for 5 minutes, and this meeting is adjourned. We'll reopen in 5 minutes with a called meeting.
How are you? You know what? You know, reaching for each other at the same time. That's a good sign. How you been? You busy? I sense that you are busy. What keeps you busy? You have property and animals, and is it beyond that?
Well, I'm doing some construction at my house. Back at a couple of workshops I've shared with some interesting issues. So I put in a building permit. No, for Molly, saying that I that I'd exceeded my accessory allowance. So anything you build, accessory buildings, in addition requirement that accessories are 50% can probably be a main structure. Well, I already exceed accessories by 7%.
Interesting.
So initially,
distract you from your important duties.
What I didn't hear from anybody is, no, we can't move forward on PE and right away. I didn't hear that from the staff. I didn't hear it from John. I think it's the only choice we have, really.
Maybe actually put some of those assets into actually pouring concrete.
Yeah. I don't know if we feel like we can do it more efficiently for the people who are buying it. I don't know why we would need to do it either, basically, but just maybe because we have.
Well, I think we have money to maintain what we have. We don't have money to build a whole new one and deal with that.
Well, if we can sell the book rights for $16 or $18 million, we can build a parking lot. Talking about being a private business guy. Come on.
We need better books, bigger books.
I mean, it took that many years to make $215,000.
Yeah, 12,000 a year would be hard to get 16 million, wouldn't it?
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the called meeting of Mayor and Council, May 1st, 2026. We will dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance, having had just done that. We can move down to item 5, which is the approval of the consent agenda, which consists of the amended minutes of the April 13th regular session and the April 17th work and called meeting. If there's no discussion, I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda, including both those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. That was 4-0 unanimous, no opposed. Next item of business, we skip down to legal and the Gateway. We've had a good discussion on the contract with Keck and Woods. Is there any further discussion at this point?
This is about the Gateway.
This is about the contract with Keck and Woods for the Gateway
The right-of-way.
right-of-way agreement that we talked about at length.
Yeah, we did talk about it, but I wanted to make sure that we were not gonna take any SPLOST or T-SPLOST funds from Andrews Park or other areas to cover this. We can call Finance Manager Karen Stepp forward if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So with SPLOST funds, there were specific items on the referendum that the voters voted on. And so preliminary engineering for sidewalks and trails is not on there. So it would have to, we were gonna have to look at the second T-SPLOST, which is public works infrastructure and other additional funding sources, but SPLOST would not be an option.
Okay, so to make that plain, the 1.2 million that was set aside for Andrews Park will not be affected.
No.
Thank you.
And I might add, I should have said this before, but under our city charter as Mayor Pro Tem, I do not act in presiding over this meeting as a council member. I act as the mayor. Therefore, I am not permitted to make motions, nor am I permitted to vote, except in the case of ties. I think you all are aware of that. Any other discussion on this item? At this point, I will entertain a motion regarding the right-of-way agreement with Keck and Woods.
Second.
Is that a motion to approve the contract as presented? And we have
Okay,
a
how do you
second
want
as
that
well?
language?
May I encourage the acceptance of the supplemental funding as part or before the acceptance of additional expenditures?
This
So
this is the grant that you secured that
It's
you're
the,
referring
it's the
to?
supplemental funding for the contract. I'd like to have that 202 agreed that we're accepting it before we commit ourselves to spending the 253.
Okay, was there a motion then to accept the grant that was secured to pay a large chunk of that money?
Is that a separate motion from the?
I believe the Director of Planning is requesting that we do a separate motion to accept that grant and then move to the motion we just had on the floor. So is there a motion to accept that grant?
So
Mi-
moved.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
may I restate? I think I made enough notes on this subject to restate it as one
Please,
motion for
please do.
The approval of a DOT right-of-way or funding commitment in federal funds of an 80 to 20 match, $210,000 for the DOT, and $110,000 commitment from the city for right-of-way acquisition, along with the approval of the acceptance of a grant from the DOT for $253,000, $202,000 of which will be paid by the DOT or federal funds, and $56,050 being paid from the city's commitment and approved by this motion.
That's perfect.
I appreciate that clarification. Councilmember Malinowski, does that work for you? You want to amend your motion to reflect what City Attorney Powell just said?
That was
Thank you. And the second as well?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, as described by the city attorney. All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. That motion is accepted unanimously, 4-0. Next item of business is public comments. Are there any public comments from anyone other than county officials that have anything they want to say? No, I'm just joking. You guys are welcome to come up and.
Sarah wanted to say something as well.
I believe we have a comment from Sarah Wybell, our Main Street Director.
Former Main Street Director as of Saturday,
Uh,
which was my last day. Hi, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thanks for letting me speak for a moment. I know this is public comment, so I just wanted to mention a couple quick things based on the discussion from the work session and the related to parking in downtown. I did want to just remind you all that while this doesn't preclude conversations about a deck, and a deck would be great and helpful because we do know that off-street untimed parking is limited and needed, that there is a lack of utilization of the West Washington Gateway parking lot because of a reluctance to walk a certain distance from where people are going. So there is an underutilized city lot that is currently provided. So I would, I've always, when people commented to me, I would remind them about that lot and say, there is always that lot if people wanted to park there and walk to their locations. Related to the providing of funds for potential parking options, there is that special tax district that was mentioned for the downtown area. And I believe that the information of rollbacks has brought it currently to a rate of 0.968 mils, and it has the potential to be levied up to 3 mils for that special tax district. So that's always something to consider of whether or not that gets raised and increased to provide those services for the downtown area. Also within that, I might, if I may be so bold as a resident, which I probably should say that I reside at 304 North 2nd Street. I should have put that for the record. Of considering paid lots within the downtown or partial paid lots and renting designated certain spaces within city lots as rented, maybe at, like, let's say, for example, there are 25 spaces spread around the downtown city lots that were rented at a lottery for $35 a month. That could be a potential of $875 a month or $10.5 thousand a year. So that's just another little bit of revenue that could help chip away at some of those other costs. It doesn't create a revenue source for the entire projects or all of the striping or funds or repairs, but it's again another drop in the bucket of revenue options that I did want to make sure that you all had in the back of your minds as you go into budgets and conversations related to that. Another thing that was when I was an employee was a conversation with the finance director was the idea of, I shared the idea of adding an alcohol by the drink tax, sometimes called pour taxes. The question at that point in time was, would that negate or undermine other alcohol taxes? And from what I've looked up, those pour taxes do not negate or replace general alcohol excise taxes and are just layered on top of existing excise taxes. And some places like Savannah or Atlanta have 4% alcohol by the drink taxes, so they're not taxing everybody. It's just, it's a small amount that most people don't even notice on their bill when they purchase alcohol at a restaurant. And that's another, again, a drop in the bucket towards those revenue ideas. And I believe a year ago or so, you might have levied those stormwater runoff fees for both residents, businesses, and everything that way. So once those are actually implemented and put into effect, that's another drop in the bucket that can, no pun intended for runoff fees, that can actually help and be added into those revenue streams. So I did want to just briefly mention that there are some ideas for generating some revenue and how you wanted to spend those revenues if you utilize those avenues. Is totally up to you, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention while I had the opportunity. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for those suggestions, Sarah.
And if
Are
I
there-
may, I just wanted to say regarding the parking, especially at the, because I thought about the parking over there by the West Washington Gateway and thought if we had maybe more signage, I know a lot of people won't walk that far, but I think signage would be important to kind of direct people if they're really desperate for someplace to park and they're driving around and around.
Betsy, there's money in the budget for this year for signage, a full package, but we weren't allowed to talk to Colleen till after Madison Fest. So
Okay.
Madison Fest is over, and so now Colleen will get started on the parking sign package.
Perfect, thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Yes, Bob.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but I am after hearing that, gonna say what you already know. I was a new business coming to town. One of the very first people after Monica that just welcomed me to the community and made everything happen was Sarah Wybell. I joked along with her and Jennifer Rosa and Stephanie Donaldson that they were Trolley's angels because they truly made things happen. And just speaking from the business perspective side of what Sarah has done, it was really wonderful. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other public comments? All right, I just wanted to mention a couple of things before we close out. The aforementioned Madison Fest, I wanted to compliment Sarah Wybell and Colleen Hall, another very successful event in our town park. Well attended, a lot of volunteers, a lot of city employees helping. The other event I wanted to kind of highlight was one we just had the other day, an internal wellness program led by Karen Robertson, our HR director. She was able to secure, I believe, 13 or 15 vendors. We had at least 50 employees come through, and it was a really good program. A lot of help from our city clerk, Deborah Gilbert, and a lot of staff members. We had a planning department representative there working, city hall employees, all. It was a very, very impressive team effort, and I thought it was really, it was good on many different levels. Any other final comments or any announcements of dates coming up from our council members? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn until our next meeting, which I believe will be May 11th as our regular session. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we stand adjourned.